Hey everyone, so the material that I'll be using to drape my pattern will be muslin, and I got this muslin in bulk on the Walmart website, and I got it for a really good deal. um, and you can check it out to see if they still have it in stock, but this is like 25 yards and I got it for about $30, so this will last me for a very long time. This is how it looks. It's folded and it's a good quality, it's decent. So I'm gonna be taking 4 strips out of this bolt 10 by 16 rectangles. So I'm gonna rip it apart, and that has to do with the grain lines, and you just want to straighten them out and make sure that the material that you'll be using is straight and not lopsided and crooked. You want to make sure you have almost close to perfect rectangles, because if not, we're going to run into some problems. So now I'm going to use my cutting mat, and I'm going to use the right angle of this mat to see how well I did with the rectangles, and if they're crooked and lopsided, then I know I have to stretch them a little bit, and you can stretch them by just tugging ever so lightly diagonally. So you'll see that now. Just tug a little bit until it straightens out. Okay, so now we're gonna press out these rectangular blocks, and when you are pressing these muslin blocks, you want to go up and down, side to side. You don't want to do the scribble method where you're just going crazy and ironing it in circular motions. You want to really just take your time with it, because you don't want to distort the grain lines. So you just want to press it up and down and side to side. So for 2 of the rectangles, I drew a line right down the middle, and you can do that by just folding the fabric in half and then drawing in the line, and that's what I did. And for the other 2, I just drew in a 1-inch line on the selvages. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I'm using a blue masking tape, which is 1/4 of an inch. You can use masking tape or you can use regular ribbon, but make sure it's 1/4 of an inch. And right now I'm going to start to form the sweetheart neckline. And they call it a sweetheart neckline because it's shaped like a heart. So you can do it however you want to do it. You can adjust the shape at the top. I kind of want a rounded type shape. Some do it more at an angle, some do it a bit pointy. So it's your choice. I'm not liking the way it looks so far, so I adjusted it some more. As you can see, it's more rounded. Now when you get to the back, you want to go a little lower from the armpit, because if you go all the way up, it's just not gonna be fitting for the person or for yourself. When you wear the garment, it's gonna be very uncomfortable, and it's just not gonna look good. So you want to make sure that it's lowered a little bit and curve that line at the side seam. So I'm going to take the first piece of muslin and I'm going to raise it up a bit over the neckline that I've created, about maybe 3 to 4 inches higher. And I'm going to start pinning, and you want to pin from the sides to really secure the muslin onto the mannequin. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm placing pins all the way down to the waistline. And you want to have a cushion bracelet to hold your pin, maybe a little bowl to hold the pins, but you just want to have a lot at hand because you're going to be pinning a lot. So also the waistline starts at the bottom of that waistband that you see on your dress form. It doesn't start at the top. So where your pin is at the bottom of that waistband that you see there. So make sure you pin right down the middle at the center front, and you'll feel the seams on the dress form. So now I'm starting to smooth out the drape. Do not pull, just smooth it out. Be gentle and start pinning. And as you can see, I pinned at the bottom because I'm going to be marking where I put the tape at, so I don't want the pins interfering with that. So I'm going to keep smoothing it out. This is the bust. I'm going to keep smoothing it out and placing pins right next to the tape that I applied on the dress form. Not necessarily on the tape, but right next to it. And I'm just going right down the middle. And I'm pinning on the princess seam. So that's like half of your body, if that makes sense. It's not half of your body, but it's like the half of your half. If I don't even know what I'm saying, but you get what I'm saying though. That line that you see is a half, okay? So now I'm cutting the excess fabric. Don't cut all the way, just cut maybe, a couple inches. Do not cut on top of your masking tape, just cut above it a little bit, because you still need some of that excess fabric. And because of the curves of the body or this dress form, there's tension, as you can see. I don't know if you can see, but I hope you can see. It looks like it's pulling, but when you just cut through the fabric a little bit, it will sort of relax the fabric, the muslin that's draped. So just make some slices and readjust if you have to. And you see those wrinkles? That's the tension. So I'm just gonna cut some more, but you just want to cut through that fabric, and hopefully it'll help with that pulling look. But it won't show up on the actual garment once it's all made, but yeah. So now I'm gonna start marking where I place my masking tape. As you can see, I'm taking a Sharpie pen, and I'm sorry if you can't see it. Next time I'll use a real Sharpie marker, but I'm just basically tracing over the lines, and you can see how I said place those pins underneath the line so that you'll be able to trace over the tape. And I'm just putting in my apex, and you just want to put a mark there or a dash. That's where the apex is. That's the highest part of your breast. And I'm just gonna go all the way down till I get to the waist. And I'm gonna go right to the center front. And I'm gonna put a little L indicator right at the top, as you can see there, just to indicate where the lines start. So now I'm gonna just push that first half over to the side. I'm not gonna completely take it down. I'm just gonna pin it to the side, and I'm gonna work on the other half of the princess seam area. So I'm gonna take the other piece of muslin, has a line right down the middle that we did earlier, and just like the other piece of muslin, I just raised it up a couple of inches. And now, starting from the bottom, I'm going to make sure that that line is right down the middle, and make sure it's straightened so that you get a nice fitting. And you're just gonna pin all the way up. Make sure it's nice and straight. And now I'm gonna start smoothing it. And it's okay if you get a little puckering, a little space there. You want that for ease, which is good. You want to be able to have a little movement in this bodice, even though it'll be very snug and tight, but you just want to make sure that you have some ease there. And if you have collapsible shoulders to your dress form, you want to make sure that it's closed during this part, because you just want this bodice, especially this bustier, to be very snug and everything to be pulled in. So make sure you collapse them. And if you don't have the collapsible dress form, then you can just take out an inch from the drape. Once you place it on paper to create the pattern, you can kind of just take an inch off, but it's up to you. So you also want to pin up the side seams, and not directly on the side seam, but you know, next to it. So now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna start marking the pin placements. But I'm making sure everything is good before I start. Okay, so for the other side, I'm gonna do the exact same thing with trimming the excess and then slicing through to release some of that tension. So for this portion of the video, I'm gonna speed it up a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna start drawing in the lines and marking the other half of the princess seam, and I'm just gonna go all the way to the side seam. Now I'm marking right down the middle of that princess seam for the other panel, the side panel, and I'm marking all the way down. And this is how it's looking so far. I'm finishing up the broken lines, and as you can see, I drew 2 L's at the corners of the shape of the drape. You can see the L at the bottom at the waistline, just as an indicator. So like I said, I'm going at the bottom of that waistband that's around the dress form. and I'm just marking that. So now I'm just gonna fix it up real quick because I'm about to do the back now. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the back portion of this bodice, and I'm gonna literally do the same exact thing that I did for the front, and you'll see me doing that right now. I'm placing one block of the muslin at the center back, and I'm using the 1-inch selvage line, not the piece that has the line in the middle. So I'm pinning to draw in the first panel of the back. So again, I'm not pinning right on the tape, just right next to it. Some people even go lower for the back, so everything is up to you. That's the beauty of draping, is that everything is in your control. Like, you can do whatever you want to do. You just gotta know how to do it correctly. But with draping, the sky is the limit. Make sure your shoulders is collapsed for this side panel here. And the shoulders to your dress form, that is. I am almost finished with this back portion. Man, this does take time, so make sure that you have a free day to really just focus on your drape project. When I was finished with this, my hands and my fingers so sore and unmovable, like with all the pins, pushing in the pins and drawing lines and holding my hand in that particular position of like a fist type position. It really made my hand tired. When I was done draping, I took down the pieces and I'm gonna press the pieces out so that I can accurately true the lines and clean it up, and then put it back together and place it on the dress form to see if I got the fitting right. So using my French curve ruler, I'm going to start truing the lines, which basically means just correcting any errors or anything that has been off. I'm going to correct. As you can see here, I'm straightening up the lines. And a quick tip is that never put a straight line at the waist. It is always a curve, a slight curve. You could use a pencil, you could use a marker, you could use a pen. I'm using a pen so that you can see what I'm doing. and I'm just using the French curve ruler to my advantage because there is curves, as you can see on this pattern block. And as you can see, the waist has a slight curve to it, and I'm also going to draw the line in the middle just to redraw that in the event that I want to add more boning. I can, due to that line being my indicator of where I should place my seams and my bones in for extra support or for style, whatever the case may be. But for the garment that I'll be making, I won't be using that center line. I think I'm just going to use the princess seams, but it's good to have that there just in case for future projects and so on and so forth. Now I'm just writing in my 1/2 inch seam allowance all around the pattern, and this is the waist here. And again, do the waistline in a slight curve. Do not do it straight. Don't make a straight line. Do a slight curve at that waist. So I'm gonna do 1/2 inch all around, and that'll be for all the muslin blocks. And this is why I mentioned to save some of that excess fabric around the muslin, because we have to draw in our 1/2 inch seam allowance, or whatever seam allowance that you want to draw in. But for me, 1/2 inch is a standard seam allowance for all garments. And when I was done with that, I just like to label my pattern block so I don't get confused. So I put side panel back, and now I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna cut all around to clean it up. This is for the other panel of the back, and I'm using my curve ruler to draw in that line at the waist. I am now writing the information for the other panel, and this is my center back. So I'm just writing that down, and here are the two pieces to the back, cut and ready. And now I'm gonna work on the front and do the same exact thing. And that line is the princess seam. So at this point, I'm almost done with all of my pieces. Just making sure everything looks good. Filling in the blanks. And making sure that my drape is corrected. and you really want to take the time out to do this. It's very important. So I wrote center front. We're gonna put this bodice together, and it's sort of like a mock-up. I'm gonna fold the seam allowance with the side panel first on top of the centerpiece, or the center front part, and I'm gonna place pins and make sure all your lines are aligned like I'm doing right now. As you can see, the side panel and the front is lined up at the top, and I'm just gonna go down. You want to finger press it, and muslin is easy to fold and manipulate, so just press it down and it'll stay flat. So keep finger pressing and place those pins in. Now if you see it starts to get weird as you go down and it starts to look funny, that's because this is the breast area, and it's gonna pucker up once you're done, because that's supposed to be filled with the breast. So it's gonna be like a bulge that you'll see. So don't worry if you see that. You're on the right track. So I ran into an issue here with the waistline, and it's not a problem. All I have to do is just bring that line down where you see it's a little raised up, about a quarter of an inch. I'm just gonna lower it down. The back portion looks perfect. All the lines look aligned, so we don't have to mess with the back. So now I'm going to connect both front and back pieces to each other with the back seam on top of the front seam, the front portions seam. Here it is. This is the final muslin block. Now let's go try it on the dress form. Okay, here we go. This is the moment of truth. Let's see if this bodice fits correctly. I also fixed the waistline on paper, so don't worry about what you see on the drape. This is the final drape. Thank you so much guys for watching. If you would like to see part 2 on how I translate this drape onto pattern paper, stay tuned. Later.